Howdy, Cowboy Gamer here, and you're watching a competitive series on how to create a six-man or six Pokemon team in Pokemon Go. This is to be competitive. We are not. We're dealing with a lot of theory. If you've already seen part one, I made assumptions like we are going to have teams of six. One thing I made an assumption on is how quickly we will be able to switch out. There may be a time limit on like when you switch out. You can't switch out for another 5 seconds or something. This would be very smart. Otherwise, we're without effects like sleep and poison things. We're not. It's just going to be I switch in my Pokemon, and then you're weak to it, and then you're going to switch in something that's going to be strong against my Pokemon. I'm like, now I'm weak to it, so I want to switch out and do something strong, so it's just going to go back and forth. So we're going to have to delay how quickly we can switch out. So we're going to need to have some heavy hitters. Where we left off, though, we had a Dragonite team with Steel Wing, probably Dragon Pulse, could be Dragon Claw, Lapras with Frost Breath, Blizzard, Rhydon with Mud Slap, Earthquake, Charizard, Wing Attack, Fire Blast, Gyarados, Bite, Hydro Pump, Execute with Zen Headbutt, Solar Beam. And I was talking about, for like Lapras, putting in Ice Beam as its charge move, just because if it's not a full bar charge move, then hopefully if there is a time limit or switch out, you won't have to charge the bar all the way up. You'll be able to do charge moves a lot quicker. Yes, you won't do as powerful of ones, but you'll do more charge moves against hopefully more Pokemon, especially with switch outs, because if you switch out, you lose all your progress towards the charge bar, so you might not want to have to spend the whole time charging up the full bar. So, problems with this was it was weak against ice, rock, grass, and electric. So, the one thing, well, the team was Dragon Breath, Dragon Claw, Dragonite, but since Steel is good against Ice and Rock, I decided to throw in Steel Wing on my Dragonite. This isn't the greatest idea just because Ice is going to destroy Dragon, but at least it gives Dragonite an ability to be both Pokemon weak to each other. So they're kind of both doing super effective damage, but usually Dragonite should win out in this battle because it has higher CP, higher overall stats. So it should be a pretty fair fight overall. So I'm not super worried about this this setup. So there's a lot of good websites and forums and discussions on how to build a six-man team in regular Pokemon games for tournament play. I'm kind of using some of these stats. I am using what I call, well, I have no name for it, but I'm using a percentage-based effectiveness, and a weakness I'm using off of a Poke Assistant website that's showing like if a Pokemon is super weak to something, like let's say Dragonite, Flying and Dragon are both weak to ice moves. So it gives a effective damage of 1.56. If it's just Fairy, it's only good against one of the types, so it's only 1.25. So I laid out all of the weaknesses against this entire team, and what I came up with when I added up all the values is really weak to rock, totaling 5.31 times damage. Ice is 4.06, electric is 4.06, and water and grass are 2.81 times damage. So these are my major things that I'm super weak to. I also did a comparison of all the different types and figured out, like, with moves, how much kind of what strength I have behind them. What I'm using is I'm only if the Pokemon could use all of its fast attacks and charge moves and they worked super well against one thing, it would be a full 1%. However, it's not an even trade because different charge moves take different amounts of time, but I did just a rough estimate. If its fast attack move is good against a type, it got 0.75 or 75% of the damage to it. So 0.75. If its charge move was there, then it got 0.25, just because of swapping out Pokemon. Charge moves might not be as effective, therefore they cannot be relied upon as much. A good example is in this group, Gyarados has Hydro Pump. How often are you going to fully charge up Hydro Pump if a fire Pokemon is on the other team? I mean, if the timer is in effect and it's holding that, maybe, but that's why it's only 0.25, so it's not as useful. So we're looking more towards the fast attack moves. So, Dragonite with Steel Wing, Dragon Claw is 0.75 to Ice, 0.75 to Rock, 0.75 to Fairy, and 0.25 because Dragon Claw is good against Dragon. I will say, overall, I really have been negating Fairy. They're just so weak of Pokemon, low CP values. A Fairy team is not going to be very viable, and even Pokemon with one Fairy move isn't most of them. It's charge moves, so charge is already weak, so I'm not super worried about Fairy in any regards. In fact, Fairy is probably going to be just dropped off the entire dynamic for future, being a unviable stat. Even a full Fairy team is not something you need to worry about, because Dragonite has like twice the CP as any Fairy Pokemon. Even though they have some good attack stats, they're not going to be something to worry about yet. Maybe when Gen 2 comes out. Lapras, we have one for ground, one flying, one dragon, because we're doing full Frost Breath, Ice Beam. This is double ice. Rhydon, since it's double earth, it's fire, electric, poison, and rock. Charizard, wing attack, flamethrower probably, so one grass, 0.75 to fighting, and one to bug. And we were doing the Charizard thing with wing attack because we were noticing how weak we were to fighting. So that was one of the things we threw in. Gyarados is 0.75 to Psychic because we're using Bite, 0.75 to Ghost, 0.25 to Fire, 0.25 to Ground, and 0.25 to Rock. And then Exeggutor is 0.25 to Water, 0.25 to Ground, 0.25 to Rock, 0.75 to Fighting, and 0.75 to Poison. Now, the attack setup leaves us with Fire at 1.25, Water at 0.25, Grass at 1, Electric at 1, Ice at 0.75, Fighting at 1.5, Poison at 1.75, Ground at 1.5, Flying at 1, Psychic at 0.75, Bug at 1, Rock at 2.25, Ghost at 0.75, Dragon at 1.25. So, what are we seeing from all this? We have a weakness to Rock, but damage against Rock is multiplied the best of the entire set. So 2.25 is our attack, strength, and multiplier, whatever, towards Rock. So while we're weak to Rock Pokemon, we also do more damage against Rock Pokemon. It also should be noted that a lot of Rock Pokemon have ground-based moves a lot of the time, or a lot of people are going to start using ground-based moves just because ground has higher DPS overall compared to Rock. So Rock's not something we should be worried too much about, but in this case we're weak to it, but we're doing a lot of damage to it, so that's good. Ice, 4.06, we're weak to it when you add all up the multipliers. We're only doing 0.75, and that's because of the Steel Wing against Dragonite, so we're pretty much trading pretty even. Electric, we're 4.06 multiplier weak to Electric. We're only doing one multiplier to attacks. Major concern is definitely Jolteon with its buff to its CP. That is something we need to worry about a little bit. Water, Grass, and Fighting are all in the 2 times multipliers over 2.5. With our changes, we've got now a multiplier of 1.5 to Fighting. Grass is 1, and Water is our main problem of just 0.25, and that is because we are running Seed Bomb on Exeggutor. So that's our main concern. Not the Rock, because we have so much strength against Rock. Not the Ice, because we should trade fairly evenly with the Dragonite with Steel Wing. But more, and Electric, we have a 1, 2, but the water of 2.81 damage multiplier to our team compared to our measly 0.25 multiplier of damage to my attacks with the one Pokemon being Exeggutor. That's our biggest concern, is water. Most of the rest isn't a concern. Their multipliers to damage is so weak. I'm pretty much not going to look at anything below 2.5. If it is a weak 2 and it's 2.5, it's so not on the major charts. We're worried more about the teams of a full water team, a Vaporeon and a Blastoise. We're looking at that, and a Lapras, Starmie. That team is going to ruin us. Even though those have much lower CPs compared to some of my Pokemon, overall, they're going to wreck the Charizard. They're just one Pokemon that's going to have a chance as Exeggutor, and it's not going to be a super great chance. So that's kind of where we're at. This isn't a horrible team, and I'm kind of happy with it, but I wanted to look at another variant, another way of doing teams as well. Kind of my attacks and my multipliers, weaknesses, I'm always going to use kind of the same way, but I wanted to try a different way of building up this team. I wanted to start with just one Pokemon that was really good, and that was, I like my Vaporeon. I was one of the first really good attackers. Stat overall, Vaporeon was good before the nerf, or the kind of the buffs and changes to CP, and I have a perfect Vaporeon with perfect moves of the Water Gun, Hydro Pump, so that's super exciting for me. I want to use my Vaporeon. So, what I'm doing is I'm looking at Vaporeon, and I'm looking at the type charts. And water is only weak to two things, grass and electric. So I'm looking at both of those, and I'm looking at overall, in the max CP chart, what is first. And that the two for each are Jolteon, which has a higher CP than the closest next Pokemon, which is Venusaur for grass. Well, technically Exeggutor, but it's really just charge moves that are going to have grass, so I looked more for the solid grass moves. Exeggutor is still pretty good, but I'm thinking the Jolteon with double electric is a little bit more concerning. So I was like, okay, since electric has a higher CP, what would be strong against electric? Since electric is good against my Vaporeon, what's great? Something good that's good against electric is ground-based moves. I was like, okay, who's my favorite ground-based attacker? Definitely Rhydon with the Mud Slap and Earthquake. So Rhydon is good against ground. Or he's a good ground attacker, so he's going to destroy my one major weakness in my team of Vaporeon, and Rhydon counters the electric problem. So, I'm like, okay, Vaporeon and Rhydon, that's two Pokemon. What is Rhydon weak against? He is weak to water and grass because he is ground. He's also weak to ice, and then he's also rock, which is water, grass as well. Fighting and ground and steel. So overall, he's got a double weakness to water and grass. So that's my biggest concern. So water is added to this chart, and now grass is added. Grass was also Vaporeon's weakness. So now we have a double worry about grass. So now we have to counter, we're going to throw in another Pokemon, but it's going to be super effective against grass. Well, the one that always jumps to mind is fire. Ice is good, but again, most ice Pokemon are coupled with water, so they're just going to do super effective damage against each other. Poison is a thought, but most poison Pokemon aren't super viable. Muck is the overall one, but it just doesn't have a good CP anymore. Yeah, it's up there, but it's not something I'm super worried about. I think I'm more worried about like the double poison grass Pokemon, Victory Bell, or the double poison boy, girl. Wow, I'm completely blanking on Pokemon names, but Nidoking and Nidoqueen, they're double poison. I think I would be more worried about maybe Muck first, but that's something. So, of grass, we probably, and I don't think poison overall is going to be a super major thing. But flying and bug are also still super great to grass. But usually the highest CP of all of that is fire. So let's throw in what's the highest fire Pokemon that isn't a legendary. Currently it's Flareon. Arcanine is really good, but Flareon has a higher overall CP. So let's throw in Flareon. So what's Flareon bad against? Water, ground, and rock, since it's fire. We already had water on from Rhydon, so now we have a double worry about water. So now what's going to get water done? Let's throw in, because we were talking about this earlier with Vaporeon, let's throw in electric over a grass just because electric has a higher CP. So we have electric. Let's throw in Jolteon, highest CP in the game. So that's good. So Jolteon is weak to ground. So that's also fire is weak to ground. So now we have a double worrisome against ground-based moves. So what's going to be down on ground Pokemon? So we got water again, but we already have a Vaporeon. Grass, ice. Ice is a good one against ground. And again, a lot of ground are also rock. So water, grass is pretty good. But ice doesn't work well against rock. So that's something to think about. It's good against ground-based, but it's not good against rock. So since they are paired, but I already have a Vaporeon, I'm not thinking grass is going to be super powerful. I'm going to run the ice Pokemon, so I'll run a Lapras, probably with just Frost Breath and Ice Beam, since I'm talking about charge moves and everything instead of Blizzard. So let's look at Lapras. Lapras is, since it's ice and it's also water, it's bad to fighting, rock, and steel. And technically, since it's also water, it's bad to grass, electric. We already have the taken care of kind of grass, and electric's up there, but not. We kind of got the Rhydon for stopping the electric. So let's look more at the ice-based variants. So that is the second time, because rock is also good against Flareon. That's the second weakness to rock. So we need to have something that's really good against rock for our final Pokemon. So again, water and grass are good. Fighting is good and ground is good. And steel. Ground, we already have Rhydon. Fighting, the best one you're going to look at is a Machamp, and his moveset is so slow. I'm betting that a Rhydon with Mud Slap Earthquake is probably going to beat him out every time. Grass, we could throw in a grass. It gives a lot of strength, because a lot of the Pokemon we're worried against are weak to grass. So grass is a consideration, but it doesn't have a high CP value. And water, again, is another one, but we already have the Vaporeon. So, what is good against rock? Well, there is no steel-based Pokemon. However, there is a very high Pokemon with a high CP that does have a steel-based fast attack. And of course, I'm talking about Dragonite again. So, this is another kind of way to build up a team of 6 Pokemon. And if you look at it, we kind of came to the same team setup. The differences are we're still using a Dragonite with Steel Wing and Dragon Claw. We're using the Lapras. We're using a fire-based Pokemon. We were using Charizard for the wing attack, and we were using the Rhydon instead of the Jolteon. We were using an Exeggutor for his attacks, and then instead of Vaporeon, we were using Gyarados. So, what kinds of things does that change? When you look at this whole setup, we have a Strength against fire, water, grass, electric, ice, we have no strength against fighting. Poison we're okay against. We're really good against ground and flying. We have no strength against psychic or ghost. We're okay against bug, and we're super good against rock and pretty good against dragon. Otherwise, there's no dark and fairy ice that isn't in consideration. So we've got some good damage against some of these. But what really concerns me is the fighting psychic ghost. So we do have some weaknesses, but with this lack of stuff against psychic and ghost, what do we need to swap around? Again, if I know I really started this whole thing off with the Vaporeon, but I was using Gyarados in the other team, and I was using it because I was using Bite. Bite kind of counters the Psychic and Ghost Pokemon really well. Doesn't do anything against fighting, but again, switching out the Jolteon would add in the Zen Headbutt and Earth Move, and that would add in your strength against fighting. So then you're covering kind of all your bases again. Now, this team, let's keep the Jolteon, but let's just swap out the Vaporeon for the Gyarados. We could also swap out the Flareon for a Arcanine with Bite and Flamethrower, but I think I want to just take out the Flareon, because that makes the fire move just a charge move, and I'm a little worried about that. So let's just, I know at the same time the water is now being just the water charge move, but I think I am pretty well covered on attacks like against rock, because that's where water would be really good. I think I have rock covered in its own way. So let's do the Gyarados. We'll keep the Jolteon, but let's look at the weaknesses. Overall, we got a 3 times multiplier against water, nothing against fire. Grass is about a 3.7 multiplier, and these are rough estimates. Instead of using the 1.56, I'm just rounding it to 1.5, just to speed up my math and make everything a little easier. Electric, we have a 1.75 multiplier to that. Ice weakness is 3.75. Fighting is 2.50. We have no weakness really to poison. Ground, we have a 4.25 multiplier. No weaknesses against flying, psychic, bug. Rock, we have a 4 times multiplier. Ghost, we have no weaknesses. Dragon, we have a 1.25 multiplier, and that's about it. So what we're left with is we're weak to grass, we're weak to ground, rock, and ice. We should probably cut out the ground and rock, just because we have so many attack multipliers towards ground and rock. We have a strong team against those two, which leaves us with grass and ice. Overall, ice is, I think, going to be just one of our major concerns, because ice is good against Dragonite, which people are going to run Dragonite in most teams. In fact, some teams are probably going to try and run 6 Dragonites if you could run the same Pokemon. If you can't, and it's just one of each, then that might be a little more interesting, but ice is going to be a major problem. Some of ice's weaknesses, like fire, don't translate over, because the majority of good ice Pokemon are paired with water, which is not weak to fire, it's strong against fire. So, while fire is good against ice, it just doesn't have the same effect. Fighting, again, is good against ice, but I've taken on a Machamp against a Lapras, and I usually come out even at best, if not losing the Machamp first. The other one is rock against ice. Their rock moves and just are really low DPS all. And the final thing is steel. And really, for steel, we're looking at Dragonites and probably Kinglers with a steel-based attack. So that's kind of the things we're looking at. Most of the charge moves steel are just not super high in DPS, so they shouldn't be super worrisome. But doing this completely different method, we are pretty much at the same type of team. So looking at all of this stuff, we're still weak to grass and ice, even with the Jolteon switched out instead of the Executor. In comparison, when we're running the Executor, we're still worried about grass and ice, but ice is super worrisome before, whereas it's a little bit, but because Lapras, if someone else runs a Lapras, it's probably paired with water, Jolteon's going to work pretty good against it. So, whereas Seed Bomb isn't the best charge move and grass isn't going to counter it super well, Electric's going to do a lot better. So, maybe this new team is slightly more powerful than my other team. I haven't really decided. Charizard's CP is a lot lower overall. It's still in the top, but when you look at Flareon, I think just a Flareon straight up might still be better. But the Charizard with Wing Attack Flareon, it has higher probably DPS, since Wing Attack, Fire Blast, or Flamethrower are really high in its percentage compared to its max output of damage. Whereas Flareon, overall fire, it's just stronger against grass and everything, but the Wing Attack and Flamethrower has a lot more versatility. But again, Charizard is flying, so we need to keep an eye on that because it adds in its own weaknesses and stuff. So both of these teams are pretty high so far, in my opinion. I like both of them. They're not just going through the CP charts and taking the best or the highest 6 CP values in the game, but looking at this, we have an ice, we have a fire, and we have electric. Those are the same as the legendary birds, so maybe using this as a guideline might, when the legendary birds get thrown in, might mean maybe I want to bring Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos, if I get all of them, into a team. And again, when we do 6v6, the legendary birds might not even be allowed. Mewtwo has super high CP and some high DPS overall. They might have to put in bans in 6v6 so that you just can't use certain Pokemon. It might also just be this is more casual, so anyone can pick any 6, and it'll stink if you're going in and you're like, oh, I get a fight against a Mewtwo. This isn't going to end well. If Mewtwo is in the game and we can use it, we might need to find some weaknesses to Psychic, so we might need to start using some dark moves, or maybe some Ghost or Bug moves just to counter out the Mewtwo a bit more. But, again, that's for another time. That's for future. I am also working on just looking at teams and more single groups, difficult combinations, just more a team composition. Not overall everything, but just maybe a super defensive team. Maybe a team of Snorlax, Lapras, Vaporeon, Dragonite, just because high CP, Slowbro, Rhydon. This is a very tanky team. It's not the highest defense HP combo in the game, but it's a very defensive team. Also, I've looked at ice teams of like Cloyster, Lapras, Jynx, Blastoise, Dugong, and Vaporeon. Even though it's watery ice, it's high defensive ice team, water team also. But these are just random ideas I'm looking at. Probably for part 3, I will look over this defensive team, the first fun team I was looking at. I'll look over strengths, I'll look over weaknesses, and I'll kind of play that out for you guys and just show you again with my multipliers what I'm looking at. And then definitely send in team compositions that you think are going to be powerful, or what teams you would like to run. Maybe you don't agree with my idea of charge moves, you'd rather use full charge moves, but let me know. Send some ideas, your 6 in, and maybe I will look over a couple of them and look at saying this team is super weak to this, and you do almost no damage, kind of like my first team, bad against water, and water is effective against it. So that's something you need to look out for when building a team. No team is going to be perfect. You're never going to have a team that's got almost no weaknesses, and if there is, I have yet to find it looking at multiple team compositions. But if you're able to find it, let me know, because I would love to see a great team composition and give me more to think about when designing my team of 6 for competitive Pokemon Go playing and battling. So, as always, this is Cowboy Gamer, signing off.